Welcome back, world, to iHearIC Radio, episode 138. I'm pretty sure this is the November 2024 episode. This is now a monthly show, by the way. I don't know if you've been following along.
Yeah. I knew I didn't know like the regularity, but I knew I know you were still hard at work.
Yeah, definitely. I work so hard on this. iHearIC Radio is a show about, ostensibly, the musical community of Iowa City, but it's also sometimes broader than that. And today, my good friend Will Yager is here at my house, and we are going to talk about probably a lot of things, but first off, the most important thing of all is that our trio with Carlos Catayo-Solares is going on a short tour later this month, and we're starting with that plug, because that if it's the first thing you hear before you shut the podcast off, you will know that WOMBAT is playing in Minneapolis, Minnesota at Resource on November 22nd, and you will know... Sorry, did you say something?
Oh, no, I'm
just hallucinating. Okay.
This is going to be a great episode.
Yeah, you don't even have to say anything because there's voices talking to me in my head, and I'll just respond to those.
Yeah, I'm here with all of my friends today.
And no one listening to the podcast will be able to hear the other side of the conversation, so I will come off as a very,
incredibly
very
lucid.
well individual. Where was I? Minneapolis, November 22nd.
Yeah, plug the tour.
At Resource. Steve Hirsch is playing with us there. Let me pull up the, because I actually don't remember who all is playing with us on the tour.
You got the flyers?
Yes, I've got them all here. I've got all this up at justinkcomer.com/shows, by the way. It's got the flyers for every show. It's got links to the venues and everything. Resource in Minneapolis, Minnesota, November 22nd. WOMBAT will be playing along with local legend Steve Hirsch. The following day, November 23rd of 2024, WOMBAT will be performing at Trumpet Blossom Cafe in Iowa City. Maybe my favorite place to play. We've had some great WOMBAT shows.
Oh, yeah.
There.
I think that is the WOMBAT home base.
Yeah.
I'm undoubtedly.
Yeah. And we'll be joined by our friends Dan Padley and Christine Burke at that show. First time we've shared a bill with Dan, so that'll be fun.
Yeah.
And he'll be playing some solo set. I haven't talked to him about what he's playing. We'll see.
Yeah, I think Dan's definitely in the category of sort of a long-time listener. First time.
Yeah. A mutual. Like, we listen to him, he listens to us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, nice to finally share a bill.
Yeah, so that's the 23rd. You know, this has a local audience, so the people who are hearing this will most likely be able to attend that show. Trumpet Blossom, November 23rd. And then November 24th, we'll be over in Chicago. We're playing at Comfort Station in Chicago. And that's a big bill. We're joined by Beth McDonald, Jack Langdon, and Riley
Leach.
Yeah, realizing as I look at it, how does Riley say?
I could have jumped in a little quicker, but I kind of wanted to see what you would come up with.
Yeah, you were about to jump in, and I felt it. And then there was just a little weird hole.
This is exactly the same sort of intimate kind of interplay you can expect from a WOMBAT performance.
That's right. It's mostly riffing. So WOMBAT is one of, I'd say one of my primary creative outlets, although it's obviously been more difficult to actually make WOMBAT happen the past few years. Mostly Carlos's fault.
Yes,
he left first.
Let the record show.
Yeah, in 2019, WOMBAT was riding high, and then Carlos moved to Philadelphia.
He abandoned us for love and fortune.
Yeah, you can't really blame him.
I mean, I can and I do.
Who values love and fortune?
And then I also left, but certainly not for those reasons.
Yeah, you left a couple years later for Baltimore. You kind of almost followed Carlos out of town, right?
I guess you could say I left for love and fortune. I just followed Carlos.
Yeah. And, I am there's no qualifications here. I'm thrilled that Will is back in Iowa. He lives much closer to me again. I liked visiting you in Baltimore. I liked being in Baltimore. I liked that East Coast tour we did. Mm-hmm. That was a great time. But now you live 90 minutes car travel away from me. which makes it a lot easier to spend time with you.
Yeah, no. I mean, a big part of coming back was like, yeah, Justin.
It's like coming home.
All jokes aside, yeah. The 4 years that I lived here were a pretty significant chapter of my life. So.
Yeah. Do you want to talk at all about what brought you back, or do you want to keep that out of it?
No. I mean, always good to. This can become like a little recruiting endeavor.
Oh, sure. Yeah, you can call this.
For any young bass players listening, who are possibly interested in becoming better at the bass. I accepted a full-time position teaching at the University of Northern Iowa. Mm-hmm. So that is what has brought me back.
Yeah, which is a good music school. It's a good in-state school with a good school of music, good reputation. So they made a good choice in hiring Will Yager.
If you need, if you only have one piece of information to, upon which to, form your judgments of you and I, they picked me. So that's enough said.
Yeah, so I'm expecting, following the release of this podcast, the bass studio will grow exponentially for the following year.
Yeah, I mean, dozens of us. We have a great thing going on there in the studio. I've been, I was here before for school, mostly to practice, but part of that was also like in some amount of service to getting this teaching credential to one day get a job, just like this. And of course, whatever you are doing and wherever you are, it's no secret that the higher ed job market is not exactly great.
They're not just handing those jobs out.
They are not.
Yeah.
So having sort of been actively on the hunt for those and coming close a few times, close enough to sort of feel like I'm not crazy for going after it, but then never, right? You really, and anybody who's been part of this process knows exactly what I'm talking. I mean, in any job, in any market, right? It's incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
Anyway, all that to say, there's some amount of you just finally getting one is such a relief. So the fact that it was in a place that I had some familiarity with and in an area where I knew I still had a good handful of close friends and collaborators was huge, right? Because there were only maybe 2 bass jobs in the last 5 years that I didn't apply to. And that was largely being just because they were in a place that I had just no interest. I was I would rather remain impoverished in Baltimore than...
Should we explicitly state the 2 places that you're not willing to go? Or would you rather let people speculate?
I'll let people speculate. I'll say that one of them that I didn't apply to, not that it necessarily would have mattered. My predecessor at UNI took that position. So, right. I like to think we just sort of helped each other out.
Yeah. You didn't apply for the job that he apparently wanted.
Exactly.
And then he left a spot open for you.
Yeah. But so much of the higher ed thing is sort of, abandoning any preference over where you might live.
That's what's really daunting about that to me, and kind of why I didn't continue pursuing it. It's I'm not really willing to follow the job market anywhere in the country.
Yeah. I
kind of have roots here, you know?
And I think I've always felt a little less rooted in that sort of way, but still I gotta be in a place where I can still, make work and work with people I want to work with. And, that's very difficult.
Well, and we were talking last night, you haven't actually lived that many places.
No, until I moved here for the first time in 2017, I mean, I had been just in East Tennessee where I was born and raised. And then I lived here for 4 years, and then I left for Baltimore and lived there for 3 years. Now I'm back in Iowa. So really just 3 states.
Yeah.
Which compared to a lot of people we know is, it's pretty low.
Yeah.
We both know many people that are far more transient for various reasons.
You've only lived in one more state than me.
What's your other state?
Yeah, I didn't know if you knew about that. So I was born in Iowa, and then we lived in Nebraska for a few years when I was a kid. Okay. And then came back here.
I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't come up with everyone. It's a big, big part of my upbringing was, would have been I think 7 years in Nebraska. Some of my early years, yeah.
Well, I mean, you know, your Iowanness is, you know, very...
Yeah, I'm overwhelmingly Iowan, so no one assumes I ever didn't live here. You know? I was thinking that, so that, you know, this is a music show. We listen to music on the show pretty often. We have been sitting on a new Wombat album for a couple years now, which is about ready to be unveiled to the world. And thanks pretty much entirely to our collaborator Carlos Catayo Solares. He does pretty much all the work
1000%,
on the Wombat releases, so he gets all the credit there. Well, I guess not to say that it's his fault it took 2 years to come out. It's just we haven't had like a great reason, I guess.
Well, there's been a lot of discussion about like what to do with it.
Yeah.
And well, should we just jam it first, or because also this record represents sort of a new way of working compared to our previous releases, but.
That's true. I was thinking we should play the shortest of the 5 tracks, just for the sake of this being like an entertainment program.
Yeah, they're all good.
Yeah, I mean it's still 8 minutes and 45 seconds long, so it's not short by any means. But yeah, and we did not ask Carlos if he would be cool with us doing this, so you're getting an exclusive sneak peek right now at the next Wombat album, and This is slated to be track 3 of 5. We haven't really settled on titles yet, so I'll leave that blank. So maybe if you want to come up with your own title out there, should I say that?
No, I'm just like, I can't even remember what the placeholder track is.
Will is looking at my phone where I've got it pulled up. Placeholder track is Destroyed.
Oh, it's pretty.
It's not bad, but it's, you know, we can talk about
we typically do a little better with the titles.
Yeah, Destroyed isn't enough, right? It's just one word. We can talk more about that process and stuff in 8 minutes and 45 seconds. Yeah. Everyone, come up with your own titles. Here we go. That's it. And there started the next one. Whoops. Didn't realize I was going to autoplay. Okay, so that's the middle track of our upcoming Wombat release. Yeah, I don't remember a lot about doing this.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it was 2 years ago, right?
Yeah, we recorded this like during our the last time we did a Midwest tour.
Yeah, because
summer 22.
Yeah, because last year was like spring, like March 23, right?
Yeah,
when
we
you
did
guys came out east.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and we didn't record anything on that trip.
No.
Yeah. So you were mentioning that this is a much different process from our previous releases. And obviously, okay, anyone who has maybe listened to anything we've released before, it's very sort of like straight. Like we record it, Carlos mixes it a bit, but it's pretty much unaltered from whatever
raw.
It sounded like in the moment. Yeah.
Unfiltered.
Yeah, and you may have noticed
The truth.
You may have noticed a lot of reverb in that track we just listened to, which is that was done after the fact. We were not doing that in real time. So Carlos, he's stretched out a bit. He kind of did some studio work, brought us in a new direction.
Yeah, I mean, I remember us, sort of having conversations. I mean, like, given the sort of fundamental nature of what we're doing in this group, which is just, free improvisation. I mean, something about you can just keep doing that.
Right.
Like it will, be different to a certain extent every time. Obviously, like Wombat certainly has a style, I think, just with how much we've played with each other, and then our respective sort of individual voices. It certainly isn't like static, but yeah. I mean, I guess how many records have we put out?
Oh, good
like
question.
4 or 5?
Yeah, I think this is our 5th album.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, I know we did like a little kind of EP, and then...
I don't need to look at the profile picture. I'm sorry, I'm trying to pull up the actual Bandcamp page.
So, yeah, not like a ton, but we were definitely like, well, like, let's interrogate that. Like, are we just going to keep doing the same thing, or do we want to, do something different?
Yeah, this is our 6th release, including like a couple of shorter ones and a live tape.
Well, and also like and also I guess I would be remiss if it's not like this is the first time we sort of like had a concept like the Tapas record was very intentionally like a bunch of short things.
shorter pieces. Befriend the Giant is also a video album,
exactly,
which I think we made some really great advances in the field of the music video with that release.
The video did in fact kill the radio star. Yeah, so I guess I'm just kind of realizing this myself. Like, well, we have been kind of like thinking about like what's the thing for the, but all that to say is like the playing. It's we may be like we're either intentionally doing shorter pieces or like the video element, but like the playing was largely unchanged. So like we kind of went into this knowing that like we were going to like record, at least generate the material very much in the same way in terms of just playing. But then, gave Carlos sort of free rein to do as he pleased after the fact. And not only in terms of like post-production processing, like, the reverb that Justin mentioned, but like, just sort of like Carlos was, I would say, was doing a lot of composing after the fact in terms of like taking the stuff that we played and then and only he knows exactly what he's done. I mean, we could like really, I guess, sit down and A/B stuff, but basically like, moving things around, stitching different parts of different pieces together. And I'm kind of curious,
which is a big departure from everything we put out before.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
everything before is just like start, play, stop.
Well,
And that's pretty much what comes out.
Yeah. And there are people who are purist about this, and there are different approaches in terms of like the sanctity of like the improvised moment. I mean, I don't know.
If you want the sanctity, go to the show.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's our tagline. I mean, and I'm sympathetic to that. I also am just kind of like, well, I don't know. Like, there are people in our field who I will refer to as novelty fetishists. Whereas I love improvising and love it as a way of making work, but I care primarily about making what I think is good music.
That's sure. Yeah.
You know, I think there are a lot of people who, and again, I have in the past held this attitude, and so I kind of get where it's coming from, but the sort of like the hierarchy being in the act of, it's the process versus product. And I don't know, you can kind of use that lens or frame of reference as it's an interesting way to think about a lot of different types of making work. Like what is prioritized, the process or the outcome.
Right.
So just always something I am kind of thinking about in different ways. But yeah, I think we're making a record, right? The record is not the same as the show. I mean, that's another kind of like, I mean, in all kinds of music, sort of the people have been having this conversation for decades, almost centuries. But yeah, no, basically, let's just do something different. And like, we know Carlos is good at this. And by that I just mean anything in the sort of realm of the post production. Yeah, no, he had a lot of free reign in terms of like doing, and I guess like he was doing a lot of composing. I mean, it's I think mixing, even in its lightest forms, is still somewhat creative because you're still on some level making choices about like what to emphasize or de-emphasize.
Definitely. Yeah,
right?
I mean, the producer is a very important part of released recorded music. Yeah.
Well, even in our past, most straight ahead raw things, like Carlos is like trying to make what we did, sound better. But
right. Yeah.
I think here, like that's really like scaled up in a way that's certainly not been true on any of our previous.
I think that the intention with previous releases is like to make it sound better, but also to just it's a reproduction of exactly what happened in that moment. Yeah. But presented in its most best presentation. Presented in its most best presentation. Me smart. But yeah, that idea of the process versus the product. Yeah, I mean, what is the point? You go through the process in order to produce something. Who cares more about the process? Yeah, the person proceeding or the person who experiences the product afterwards?
Well, I mean, this represents a possible very large departure point, but that's why we're here, I guess. I think especially for people working and my way of sort of trying to not make it specifically about genre is to sort of refer to things as sort of commercial or non-commercial music, and obviously that's not like a totally binary situation.
Sure, and commercial music, I mean, does it even exist anymore?
Yeah, there's also that. Yeah, no, but specifically people in aggressively non-commercial music.
Yeah, very, very self-consciously not appealing to the masses.
Yeah. And sometimes, trying to be as, repulsive as possible. But no, I mean, I've, and anybody most of the ways in which I work fall in this category. I would say even classical music and jazz music are still largely in the realm of the non-commercial.
Yeah.
The whole, trajectory of my artistic career has been trying to find a smaller audience, it seems. So yeah, I always grappled with that because when you're younger and you're starting out, you are sort of concerned with your audience, even if it is just your family or, trying to convince your parents or whoever to buy you a new guitar and then whatever it might be, right? The negotiation starts very early on. But most of us making music like this are making it for ourselves. And I don't think that's bad. And I feel like a big part of how I've changed my thinking the last couple of years is sort of I don't think we should demonize the selfish. Being selfish can lead certainly to less than ideal situations or outcomes. But like,
sure, objectivism, Ayn Rand.
yeah.
Sorry, that's just what immediately came to mind.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. It's like, oh yeah, well, this is iHearIC, right? Okay, yeah. Which podcast are we doing?
I mean, it's on the Rock Hard feed, so this is all the same now.
Yeah. But we make the music that we want to make. Like, we are making it for ourselves. It is like technically a selfish act. That doesn't mean that I don't care. I've always cared about people liking it. Yeah, I hope that they do. I feel like my expectations are reasonable. I don't hope like thousands of people do, but like, and you know,
I mean, I think that what I just played on the podcast is like interesting music that I think you don't have to be super weird to like get into that. I don't think. I think that track in particular is like a very like gothic rock track.
Yeah. Well, and I always, this is borne out like for me, like time and time again when I like play sort of a weird piece that maybe, you know, like if I'm playing like a solo double bass piece that involves like a lot of, you know, possibly unfamiliar like ways of playing the instrument, extended techniques, unconventional approaches, you know, things of that nature. Like a lot of times when I, not that this happens a lot, but like if I'm like in schools or anytime I'm like in a situation where I'm playing for younger people, especially like children, they often love it.
They have less
because they
cultural baggage with
they haven't been enculturated as much, you know, about like what they should or shouldn't like, and so it's just this kind of like raw, like they're just like, this is a cool sound, and like that's exciting.
Yeah,
which is kind of also at the core of like why I like playing this music. Like I just love sound.
Yeah,
and I don't need it. I'm quoting Cage badly from this video interview late in his life. It's like I don't need it to be about something. I just like it for its own sake.
Yeah.
Which is sort of, I mean, we're really getting into the big ones. Post Cagean music. But I think basically a lot of people have always felt that way, and then, you know, somebody kind of comes along and like says it nicely, and then we're like, oh yeah, that's it, right?
Yeah, he said everything nicely. Yeah, he was such a nice guy.
Yeah.
By the way,
just don't ask him about jazz.
If you've been to if you've been to Close House, there's a photo of John Cage like right inside the main entrance, just to the right of the front door. So you have been in the presence of the man we're talking about now. If you happen to be somebody listening to this who doesn't know who that is, which I would kind of be surprised by, but yeah, his influence is felt everywhere in the art world.
Certainly.
I also wanted to mention, this is very technical, but the track I played a few minutes ago, I didn't mention beforehand that it is in stereo. So if you are like me, you listen to podcasts with one earbud in, just go back. That was like maybe 20 minutes ago that started. Listen to it again with both ears. Sorry. If you didn't have your left headphone in, you didn't hear me at all. So I can't allow that. So please go back.
Yeah, you're missing out on like 50% of Carlos's work. He's definitely like thinking stereo in a lot of the choices he makes.
Yeah.
Just to kind of, I mean, not that we need to like bring it back in, but one thing that I was really struck by, again, having listened to this for the first time in a while, is just like, so for those of you who don't know, we are basically playing bass, guitar, and saxophone in Wombat.
Yeah.
And, you know, Carlos's approach to the guitar is really kind of 50-50 pedal board guitar, which is not like that outlandish for most guitarists, but, you know, he's really playing the pedal board as much as, you know, Carlos, you know, can maybe speak for himself at a later date, but, you know, a really integrated approach, I guess I'll say.
Sure.
So one thing I was struck by that he did very nicely is sort of like you could hear whatever sort of sound world he was working with on the guitar, and then like and you know, whereas obviously like Justin and I are doing like very wild things with our instruments, but it's still like pretty clearly like acoustic.
Yeah, it's untreated acoustic. Like it's just the bass. It's just the saxophone.
I'm doing. There was some preparations and some other materials at least involved in the bass. I heard some you know, Will Styrofoam classics.
Yeah, the Styrofoam sounded really good on that.
Yeah. Thank you. But no, there was a moment where like you could really hear, and I thought was like, wow, that is like so it was like so seamless and like well done. The sort of like what the world of the guitar like enveloping us.
Right. He kind of pulled us into it. Yeah.
Right. Because it's like you can kind of hear 3 like point sources, and then it like shifts in a way that like could not be done live. At least easily.
Right. We'd have to really intend to do that from the start.
Yeah.
To make that happen live.
Well, and just to say, like, if we're talking about like what's special about this record, just highlighting that as a moment of like, yeah, like that is something that I think is, compared to our other recorded output, like certainly like that's exactly the kind of thing like we were like, yeah, like let's play with that. Mm-hmm. So that's a good example, I think, of the kind of how this record is different than our earlier ones.
Yeah. Another thing I had in mind while we were talking, the idea of making this music for ourselves, which we are obviously, but it's also, we like other music that sounds like this and follows similar processes, similar, God, what's the word I'm looking for? Ideas about what music is and can be. Mm-hmm. So obviously how did we end up enjoying this side of sound? It's from hearing other people having done it, right? So,
sure.
So even though we are making it for ourselves, we are also inevitably, like, hopefully, and it's inevitable, and I hope it happens. Somebody is going to hear it and also like be really interested and attracted to it, and maybe they'll do their own. They'll also start exploring, and opening up the possibilities.
Yeah, I mean that. I think in some ways that's no greater compliment could be paid. To like whatever it might be to like inspire somebody to like do something. That's the power of music.
Yeah, it's the power of love too.
Exactly.
Will, I have your Bandcamp page pulled up also. Because I was thinking we could maybe pull something up from here. I really like Will's Bandcamp page. He has it organized so you can see a bunch of releases he's on, including other people's works, other people's collaborative albums. willyager.bandcamp.com. The homepage is really just well laid out. Is there maybe a recent project that you might be interested in highlighting?
Oh, good question. What do we have on there? What do I do? What have I done? Yeah, I haven't put out a solo thing super recently. It's hard to pick favorites because there are a lot of things I've done with my friends.
Right. You got to pick your favorite friend now.
Shit.
If he doesn't say your name, be offended.
Yeah. You can hit us in the comments. I guess I'll highlight a more recent release, just because I don't think it's quite gotten the attention that I would have hoped. Yeah, something. I guess like my most recent thing, a record that I put out with our a mutual friend and WOMBAT, Bill Scherer. We shared a bill with Seth. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely we have.
Yeah, our friend Seth Davis.
Wait, has WOMBAT played with Seth?
But
he didn't play at that show in Kansas City.
No, but he came into town.
Yeah.
He came here once, but maybe that was Christine Burke on something.
I don't remember. It's all just one happy family and various permutations.
Well, I guess technically we've shared bills at Mock Sonic.
That's true. Yeah.
But either way, like a staunch Midwest experimental music ally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Seth and I put out something a few months ago. What's the date?
That would have been June 6th of 2024.
No, I meant the title.
Oh, the title,
which
is
the
album.
April 8th?
April 8th, 1969.
Yeah, April 8th, 1969, which of course is, might be obvious.
Of course.
Was opening day for Major League Baseball in 1969.
As you all know.
Yeah, so this project started as kind of a 2020 thing, when everybody was at home mostly, and Seth and I just sort of started a collaboration. Seth and I first met when I first got here to Iowa for
he was in town for a school
EMCC.
Thing, right? Yeah.
Rest in peace.
Oh, is that over now?
As far as I know.
Yeah. I wouldn't know. I'm outside of the academy now.
Yeah, no, I think it's
been exiled to the world of community college and happiness.
I think EMCC is defunct, or at least it is. Iowa got kicked out or something.
Oh, cool.
I did hear about it happening, but like just at Colorado. Anyway, I don't know.
Whatever.
So we met. I guess that would have been like 2018, and then just being people in the Midwest, we stayed in touch, and also in addition to being a composer, he's a guitarist, improviser, performer. So yeah, many near misses like with Wombat and being at the same things and stuff. So we'd always talked about kind of doing something together, like whether he write me a piece that that I played, a more traditional composer performer collaboration, or something where we're both performing. And I think just as a way to like start doing something, we basically just sort of started, which I think is, especially since 2020, kind of become almost a standard way of working, especially because I think it's a little easier with improvised music.
Sure. Yeah.
Basically just like sending each, I would like record some sort of solo and then send it to Seth, who would then basically run it through this Ableton rig that he was working with at the time. And I think maybe still is. I think it's kind of sort of a quote instrument that he's like continuing to like build and
sure, yeah.
develop. And so basically what you hear on this recording is like a pretty like, it's not like bass and electronics, like two voices, with, like, or like a lot of, I've played many pieces that are like bass with some kind of like live processing or fixed media. So I think what you hear here is like, it's way more integrated in kind of a hyper instrument approach, because you're hearing like something that like, we're not, it's not like the material is not, it's kind of, if it's conversational, it's like one-sided, because for the most part, I would send Seth something that then he then kind of responded to, or like ran through his process.
That was a good callback, by the way, to the voices in my head thing from the beginning of this.
Exactly. Yeah. So just to say, like, what you hear here is kind of like a more integrated, like greater than the sum of its parts type of thing, rather than like two people improvising with each other. Yeah, if that makes sense. I think once people hear it, they'll understand what I'm talking about. But in terms of a titling scheme, I
see a lot of names here.
Yeah. If there's something I like more than music, it's baseball. And Seth is also a baseball fan. Of course, he's a Royals fan, being in Kansas City. I'm an Atlanta Braves fan. But
was that the closest team to you growing up?
Technically, I guess being in Knoxville, Tennessee, Cincinnati is like 4 hours north. Atlanta's 4 hours south. Okay. But they're not the same 4 hours. Once you cross that river,
it's a different country.
You have to go into Ohio from Kentucky. But no, like all of the Southeast is Braves country. So I think being a child in the 90s, it was a nice time to be a Braves fan. But yeah, no, we like kind of opted, to go with his allegiance for now I'm like, why didn't we do it? The next record will be a Braves opening day lineup. Yeah,
so this is all Royals themed. Okay.
Yeah. So
I'm not
April 8,
familiar
1969,
with
and this was the first year that the Royals were a team. So that's kind of why we went with it. And so we have 9 tracks, each track named in accordance with the opening day lineup for the inaugural year of the Kansas City Royals.
Nice. Do you want me to flip this over so you can read it?
Yeah, I'm not. Well, I don't. Everybody knows the.
Well, yeah, we don't need to say them.
I was like featuring, some some names you probably don't know, but like Lou Piniella, pretty famous figure in baseball, famous as a manager. Like Wally Bunker, Bob Oliver.
Wally Bunker is a name that I've heard. I am so like I know nothing of baseball, but I've heard of Wally Bunker. It's kind of a cartoonish name. Very cool.
Yeah. And if you're we have a little blurb on the Bandcamp page that says a little bit more about the process. But I don't know. Can we play one?
Yeah. Do you have a preference for which one you might like to hear?
It's funny because like we put the titles on them after like I barely know like which title refers to which track.
Yeah, that happens a lot with this kind of music. We're not like
fact.
writing songs. So the titles maybe are not so explicitly conjuring memories of what the piece is.
Yeah. Let's go. Well, let's pick we range pretty widely here in terms of length. Let's go with a tidier one. Well, we were talking Wally Bunker. How about we go with that?
Yeah, which is the closer from this album, Wally Bunker. And, we'll talk more about Wally Bunker after we hear his namesake piece here. Wow. Was there like crickets in that? Was that from you originally?
I don't know.
Yeah, I like how that really just...
Crickets? What are you talking about?
Did you not hear crickets at the end of that? Oh, shit. There I go again.
No, there was something in there, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that was very... I mean, like what you were saying, it becomes one thing. It's not like two entities sort of playing with each other. It's like the bass becomes something entirely different. And sometimes I can't even tell like what you were doing initially.
Yeah, I think too, like, you know, I think especially like compared to like the Wombat recording, like you can also hear like the power of, you know, choices it made in the mixing, you know, process. Like this is pretty like integrated. Like, you know, Seth would have to speak to the specifics of his setup, but it's almost like we're kind of just hearing the output from him without like very much like of the original like dry bass, which I think, I mean, I guess it would be kind of interesting to hear that, but that would almost just be a very different kind of, you know, concept in a way.
That is kind of an interesting thought to do like the stems release of this.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't worry, I'll cut that.
Okay.
Not that one though.
Oh, okay.
That's staying in.
Well, as long as we get a good one. Yeah, no, I mean, I think in the solos, we really spent like 3 years. It was like very like every once in a while, like, you know, sometimes I would record a solo for something and then just like reuse the recording to send to Seth, like, you know, efficiency.
Yeah, sure.
And then, you know,
no reason not to.
Yeah, I mean,
it's going to sound completely different after this
exactly.
process. Yeah.
And this was also like, especially like earlier on, like 2020, 21, once you know, we all had to like make recordings for anything. And then I sort of became, you know, lightly radicalized about like all of the unpaid labor of making the recordings. I basically was like, I'm going to use, you know, because I would see like, you know, there was that whole brief moment of like online like recital series and stuff, like, which I, you know, definitely participated in and was grateful for at the time. You know, it served a function in that moment.
Yeah.
But you would see sometimes, like, I saw once or twice somebody like a requirement that it had to be like a new recording for that thing. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, are you going to like pay me to, why would I make a new, especially like if I'm playing a piece, right? Like,
sure, yeah.
Why would I, anyway.
If I have a good recording of this.
That's like the whole point of having a recording.
Yeah.
You know, it's like nobody's giving you any money to like book studio time or even just your own time and labor, you know, like if you're at home.
Yeah. Right.
Anyway, so like there's a mix of like repurposed things. And then also there are definitely some I went and recorded a solo like in mind for this project. And I would guess this is probably one of those based on some choices I was making that you can hear at the end of the track, or because I definitely, and I didn't, you know, I had no idea like what I had no idea what the outcome would be. Like I kind of knew what the process would be, but you know, it's always going to run it through Ableton. Well, that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, but you can hear what I'm talking about at the end of that, where I definitely was like thinking it might possibly be more interactive than the end result being, like where I kind of would like leave more space than I might normally if I was just playing solo.
Right.
For there to kind of like leave room for him to do something, you know. It was almost like approaching it as if we were playing a duo, but like I couldn't hear him, you know, and trying to like anticipate that and like leave some space.
Which is kind of an interesting comment on that whole period of like all interactions being digital.
Yeah, there's something really sometimes embedded there.
I can't hear myself. Can't hear what's on the other end. I don't know, man. I'm putting something in there.
Yeah. So yeah, it was just sort of like, I was like, oh yeah. Like, I mean, hearing that now, like kind of like takes me, you know, I was trying to like, you know, recover the mindset that I might have had at the time. And
right.
Yeah, I think you can hear that at the end where I was sort of like, you know, playing some sort of, you know, harmonics and then like kind of leaving space. And, but yeah, no, I mean, I would say like in terms of like the density and like, sonic complexity, you know, that track is pretty, emblematic of the whole recording, which is available on my Bandcamp.
It sure is. Yeah, you can find it through Will's Bandcamp, willyager.bandcamp.com. This was released through our friend Gabby Vanek's label, Oxcart New Music, which also features a lot of music that I've made.
Yeah.
I'm a big part of Oxcart, so
label and sort of presenting body here in Iowa City. So our local friends should get hip.
Yeah. If you don't know Gabby, I mean, what are you even doing?
I know, right?
But all of that, that people weren't waiting for us to talk about that. They were waiting for us to talk about Wally Bunker, the baseball player.
Boy. I had, and I'm embarrassed that I kind of forgot. So a lot of this was recorded and done when I lived in Baltimore, and then this came out at pretty much what kind of ended up being one of the sort of like lined up with sort of the end of my Baltimore, at least that Baltimore chapter.
Right.
So most of you will remember that before he was picked for the Royals expansion draft in 1969, he sort of rose to prominence as a Baltimore Oriole.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
So, there's some mojo at play for sure. Okay, yes, this is from Wikipedia. So there's a Memorial Stadium, which is super close to where I used to live up in Waverly. So popular had Bunker become in his rookie year that Baltimore Mayor Theodore McKeldin, prior to a game at Memorial Stadium, proclaimed the mound as Baltimore's Bunker Hill, even christening it with a handful of earth from the actual Bunker Hill.
Wow.
And he won that game.
Of course. I mean, there's a lot of like ghosts sort of powering him, The soil of Bunker Hill is right there.
Oh, that's heavy, heavy mojo. Yeah, it was picked for the Royals expansion draft and was like, it plagued with injuries, because this was still back in the time when sort of, the approach to sports medicine was grit. But still, had a pretty decent career. And Mickey Mantle once referred to Bunker's sinker as the type of pitch, quote, you could break your back on, which I think is pretty tight. Mickey Mantle's exceedingly quotable.
Yeah.
What's also, I think, very adorable is that Wally Bunker and his wife later in life began writing and illustrating children's literature.
Anything I might be familiar with?
They were artists in residence at like the Palm Key Nature Getaway in South Carolina. Under the new Waldemar Friends and Such collection, a low country tale concerning Waldemar Wiggins introduces children to a quaint little bird born in South Carolina's low country.
Wow.
And if that's just not the most adorable thing you've ever heard.
Yeah, a man of many talents, it turns out.
So here's to you, Wally Bunker.
Yeah. Well, Will, it has been 1 hour and 3 minutes since we hit record on this, which means we should probably start wrapping this up before we test everyone's patience.
We're not doing a full 4-hour Joe Rogan experience.
Well, where do you you have to head back to Cedar Falls sometime, right?
As soon as I can. I think my belongings might have been recovered.
Okay, cool. That was
those of you, if you know, you know.
Secret, the background, the tension. If you could hear tension in our voices, because there's a crisis to be solved.
I just hope all the iHearIC listeners appreciate our commitment to getting this podcast done under a time of severe duress.
Yeah. Well, so before we sign off, Will, aside from the Wombat tour, do you have any things upcoming you might want people to know about?
Wombat is the next big thing for me. If you are a friend that lives in New York City, I'm pretty excited about a concert I have coming up in early December. Let me check the date. I think it's the 8th. Yeah, the 8th, with the preeminent new music ensemble Load Bang.
Oh, awesome.
And a great violinist, Miranda Cookson. So yeah, the two of us are joining Load Bang to premiere a new, pretty significant, I think 30 minutes, a new chamber piece by the great composer Michael Hirsch, who I got to know through my time in Baltimore. So the Mid-Atlantic ripples continue through my life. So I'm really excited about that.
That's New York City, December 8th.
Yeah. So if Wombat's not enough and you want to follow me out to New York.
Head out. Everyone likes hanging out in New York, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Gives you an excuse to go hang out in New York, early December, right when school's about to close for the year. Skip your finals. Go to New York. Well, let me just remind people, Wombat Tour, November 22nd in Minneapolis at Resource, November 23rd in Iowa City at Trumpet Blossom Cafe, November 24th in Chicago, Illinois at Comfort Station.
Nailed it.
Come to the shows.
Yes.
And yeah, I always end these with music, but I didn't have anything really selected to play. What if I play something from the first Wombat release as a little bit of a contrast?
Oh, man.
So this is from the very first thing we released, and you can kind of compare it to the sort of the heavy reverb that you heard before on that upcoming track. This is from our first release, Hand Wrought Debris.
That's a pretty good title.
And, that comes from your repository of titles, right, Will? And I'm going to play the first track on there, which is called Did You Keep the Remains? And that will close us out for this edition of iHearIC Radio. Thank you, Will.
Always a pleasure.
Always so easy to talk to you because we have so much in common.
It's true.
And we like each other.
That's really all you need in this world.
That's how you do a podcast, people. Just have friends.
That's right. If we can't inspire you to make music, maybe we can inspire you to start a podcast.
Yeah. It's a low barrier to entry if you know what you're doing. If you need help, I'll even help you do it too. So, okay, here. From the first Wombat album from back in 2019 is when we released this. Did You Keep the Remains?